Now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You could just read the Taliban is classified, and if you don't know, the Taliban's in charge of Afghanistan. They're classified as a specially designated global terrorist organization by OFAC. So post-2021, so this is last year, 2024, we spent $697 million of the taxpayers' dollars in Afghanistan, including $534,719,000 in change from USAID in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is ruled by folks named Sarajuddin Haqqani. The Haqqani network mean anything to anybody in the room? How about Abdullah bin Laden? Who gets some of that money? Does that name ring a bell to anybody in the room? Because your money, $697 million annually, plus the shipments of cash funds madrasas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, ISIS-Khorasan, terrorist training camps. That's what it's funding.
This hearing was unlike anything we've seen in a long time. The tension, the anger, the brutal honesty from Scott Perry, it shook the entire room. His words weren't just political talking points. They were a gut punch, a painful reminder that billions of American dollars might have gone straight into terrorist hands, while U.S. veterans came home wondering what their sacrifice was even for. Scott Perry didn't waste a second. He ripped right into the core issue. $697 million in taxpayer money sent to Afghanistan last year, a country now run by the Taliban, a U.S. designated global terrorist group. His tone, raw, furious, every word carried the weight of 20 years of American blood spilled on Afghan soil.
Now recognize Representative Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. USAID was created through executive order in 1961 by President Kennedy, long having lost and strayed from its mission, lost its direction. Even the Clinton administration tried unsuccessfully to reform it. And we spend, I don't know, somewhere between $40 and $50 billion annually on this organization. And with the things that you hear, well, many of us, probably most of us in the room, agree with projecting America's power for the good of all the world around the globe. Quite honestly, if our enemies were asked to design a foreign aid program that would actively undermine the United States of America at maximum cost to the taxpayer, they would be hard-pressed to create a scheme more effective than USAID. That's shocking to say, but I just, it's, look, let's just go to a couple things here. We left Afghanistan, and I'll just I'll characterize it as left in August of 2021. August of 2021. So the Taliban's in charge. Taliban threatens the lives of the NGO personnel distributing USAID. They claim credit for USAID distribution. They interfere with the distribution of USAID aid. They tax the beneficiary of the aid. They tax the delivery service. They steal the food commodities. They divert the funds. They extort citizens for protection for USAID aid. They create sham procurement schemes, and they threaten the lives of those who oppose those schemes. Now, that all occurred before August of 2021, when we were there. Now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You could just read the Taliban is classified, and if you don't know, the Taliban's in charge of Afghanistan. They're classified as a specially designated global terrorist organization by OFAC. So post-2021, so this is last year, 2024, we spent $697 million of the taxpayers' dollars in Afghanistan, including $534,719,000 in change from USAID in Afghanistan. I don't know what we think we're going to change in Afghanistan. We lost 22,000, lost or wounded 22,500 Americans in Afghanistan over the course of our term there in the war, spending over $2 trillion. We're just going to keep on spending because somehow we think it's going to get better. And if you're wondering who's in charge of Afghanistan getting the money, and that money I just mentioned, The 697 million is on top of, and is in addition to the weekly to every 10-day shipments in cash of $40 to $80 million. Afghanistan is ruled by folks named Sarajuddin Haqqani. The Haqqani network mean anything to anybody in the room? How about Abdullah bin Laden? Who gets some of that money? Does that name ring a bell to anybody in the room? Because your money, $697 million annually, plus the shipments of cash funds madrasas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, ISIS Khorasan, terrorist training camps. That's what it's funding. If you think that the program under Operation Enduring Sentinel entitled Women's Scholarship Endowment, which receives $60 million annually, or the Young Women Lead, which gets about $5 million annually, is going to women who, by the way, if you read the Inspector General's report, is telling you that the Taliban does not allow women to speak in public. Yet somehow you're believing, and American people are supposed to believe, that this money is going for the betterment of the women in Afghanistan. It is not. You are funding terrorism, and it's coming through USAID. And it's not just Afghanistan, because Pakistan's right next door. USAID spent $840 million in the last 20 years on Pakistan's education-related program. It includes $136 million to build 120 schools, of which there is zero evidence that any of them were built. Why would there be any evidence? The Inspector General can't get in to see them. But you know what? We doubled down and spent $20 million from USAID to create educational television programs for children unable to attend the physical school. Yeah, they can't attend it because it doesn't exist. You paid for it. Somebody else got the money. You are paying for terrorism. This has got to end. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. In addition, we don't even have an embassy in Afghanistan. Chair now recognizes the representative from California, Mr. Barra.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start off by, I know a lot of USAID workers, former workers, alumni are watching this hearing. I want to thank them for their work. They're patriotic Americans. They're out there, they're doing God's work, helping save lives and everything else. And I'm sorry that you guys are caught up in this. So I want to appreciate this on behalf of the United States of America. You guys are patriotic Americans. I've visited with a lot of these folks. I travel a lot, gone into refugee camps, and have seen what they do in terms of life-saving stuff. And again, it's super important work that they do. It represents the best of American values, and it is really sad to see these folks get thrown under the bus. I don't want a 21-year-old tech bro going through deciding which programs we should continue and not continue. Mr. Chairman, I want us to work and do that work. We can go line by line, or we could hire Mr. Yoho to go through line by line and say, hey, here's the programs that make sense, here's the ones that don't. But that's our job. That's what we're supposed to be doing. That's our oversight. I don't want that 21-year-old tech bro, probably has never traveled anywhere.
He called out USAID for pumping funds into a place run by guys like Sarajuddin Haqqani, head of the Haqqani network, and figures tied to bin Laden himself. According to Perry, this isn't aid. It's terrorist financing, with hardworking Americans footing the bill. Unbelievable. Perry's voice got heavier, angrier as he laid out the emotional toll. He reminded the committee 22,000 American soldiers killed or wounded in Afghanistan. 2 decades of war, trillions spent, families shattered, and now it's all being undone with U.S. cash flowing right to the enemies those soldiers fought. He didn't hold back. He called it disgraceful, shameful. He said veterans were betrayed, their sacrifice mocked by the very government that sent them. His frustration filled the room and left it ice cold. Scott Perry broke down the Taliban's alleged scheme step by step. They threaten aid workers' lives, seize shipments, tax beneficiaries, divert food and money, extort villages for protection, create sham procurement systems, steal everything that comes in, and the money keeps pouring. He shouted the names again, Kari bin Laden, letting them hang like a dark cloud over the room. Then the bombshell, weekly cash shipments of $40 million to $80 million still landing in Afghanistan. Perry said that money funds madrasas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, ISIS-K, Boko Haram, terrorist training camps. He didn't call it a mistake. He called it funding America's enemies. Come on, give me a break. Just as the committee tried to recover, Perry shifted to Pakistan. USAID spent $840 million over 2 decades on education, including $136 million for 120 schools. Except there's zero proof those schools exist. Inspectors weren't even allowed to check. No buildings, no classrooms, nothing. And get this, USAID spent another $20 million on educational TV programs for kids supposed to attend schools that never existed. His message, brutal. You're paying for corruption, for lies, for terrorism. As Scott Perry wrapped up, no cheering, no applause, just heavy, suffocating silence. Because for a moment everyone felt the pain he was channeling. The pain of veterans, of wasted sacrifice, of a nation watching as money strengthened the enemies it fought for 20 years. Perry didn't just accuse USAID of incompetence, he accused it of betrayal, and the emotion, undeniable. This hearing wasn't a debate, it was a reckoning. Scott Perry ripped open wounds that never healed since the Afghan withdrawal. His message? Simple, devastating. America deserves answers. Veterans deserve respect. Taxpayers deserve accountability. Whether anything changes now, only time will tell.